The tavern was packed with sweaty bodies, men hogging the floor space for a drink after a long day's labor. With it being peak time, your legs could not rest. You would serve one customer as you were being shouted for from across the room by another. You hated this time of day. There was always the chance of slipping on vomit, or that you would have to avoid a brawl between dimwits. You could barely make out their orders through their drunken slurs. You couldn't imagine how anyone managed to make out a full sentence to take offense to. The men were stupider when the sun set. Though they barely respected boundaries in the sunlight, alcohol made them bolder. The amounts of hands that would find their way to your body was a fresh wave of discomfort every night. You did your best to ignore it, for every person needs a means to survive, and this was yours. You were a server at a local inn working for coppers that barely tied you over, but you powered through. You just walked a little faster in the hopes their hands would be too slow. As you turn towards the next demand for attention, a pair of luminescent orbs catch your eyes in the sea of dull worker clothes. Your head snaps to mark the outlandish sight, but finds nothing amongst the crowd. You attribute the sighting to a long day and a trick of candlelight. However, in the back of your mind, you consider that a magic user may be among the common folk tonight. The bar begins to quiet at the half-moon's highest point. As the innkeeper kicked out the stranglers, passed out drunks that you were grateful to not have to deal with, you went out through the side door to dispose of the rubbish. Broken bottles and forgotten items that were of no use to the innkeeper. You did this every night, but still you shivered. Not because in the dead of night the air was chilling, but because the quiet of this time was eerie. The drastic change of raucous and rowdy to oppressing silence was overwhelming. It felt unnatural, as though beyond the shadows of the darkened alley, the night sheltered a dangerous secret. A secret you would rather not find. So, you hurried along to complete your final task of the night, for after, you could rest your aching feet. You dispose of the rubbish and eagerly turn on your heel, only to halt at the dark figure at the end of the alley. You freeze, alarmed by the sudden appearance, though as you watch it, you calm a little, noticing the masculine silhouette seemed distressed. His hands were planted firmly against the walls of the inn. With a trick of the light, you could almost assume his fingers dug into it. His ragged breaths carried down the alley, and he was trembling. A drunk, you decided, possibly emptying his stomach's contents. Someone unsteady you could maneuver around and avoid. You take a breath to calm the remnants of your nerves before stepping to pass the stranger. You keep close to the neighboring walls and walk lightly to not bring attention to yourself. You're so close to clearing your final hurdle of the night that an excitement at finally being able to go home rushed through you, though all those feelings would still and drop with your heart when a hand shot out and grabbed your arm. You startle, instinctively trying to wrench your hand away, but the fingers gripping your forearm were like iron shackles. The man hadn't moved, not so much as falter at your struggle. His face was hidden by a hood, and he now leaned against the wall as though it was the only thing supporting his weight. Perhaps he needed help. You swallow, trying to reason with him. Sorry, but could you let go? The man yanks you to him, swinging you into the wall. You collide harshly with the brick, the back of your head taking a forceful blow that sends your thoughts to disarray. When you manage to look up, the figure was still huffing, like he'd run a mile. Real terror races through you when you realize your arms were trapped at the sides of your head. What on earth was the stranger doing? You force yourself to meet your offender's eyes, trying to find an intention. But then you still. His eyes were beautiful, both glowing with a different color's beauty. One steel grey, like a freshly made blade, sharp and cold and clever, as though it would slip right through your heart without a sound and walk away innocent. The other was a brilliant blue, like sapphires the wealthy wore around their necks, only so much better, like a lake of the glittering gems trapped in his iris. But for as beautiful as they were also pained and pooling with tears. The stranger was crying with such anguish, you swore your own heart could feel it. You couldn't help but ask, almost unconsciously, "Are you okay?" His beautiful eyes met yours, seeing you properly for the first time. You watched the pureness fade, how the whites of his eyes became corrupted by black ink. In one harsh movement, he surged forward and tightened his restraining grip at your hands. Teeth punctured the skin of your neck, and you cried out at the sudden pain. But there was no one to hear. Then, all at once, the pain disappeared, faded away on the faint night breeze. And what replaced it was pure euphoria, a feeling that made drags of the rush of drugs. It was as though sunlight or a rainbow or the ocean breeze, all the good things Mother Nature had gifted the earth, was strumming through your veins, and you sunk into it, relished in the feeling as it overrun your body. Your muscles relaxed. You barely register the scrape of the rough brick wall against your back as you're sliding down. The stranger lowered with you, as though he was guiding you to sit against the wall. His manacle-like grip had unlocked. Now he held you carefully, as though you were precious to him. His large hand cradled your head as it leaned away to make room for his mouth. The licks of his tongue were not subtle at your neck, and would make you shiver if you hadn't lost all control. In the next moment, you swore you were floating, and in the moments that followed, you soared higher and higher until you touched the sparkling night sky. The first thing you are aware of is that your eyelids are too heavy to lift fully. You feel weighted, sunken into a bed much too luxurious to be your own. It's warm and blissful, and the blankets are so soft. But the sheer strangeness of how comfortable you were forced your eyes open to view your surroundings. You turn your head slightly and feel a soreness in your neck. Cringing, you lift your hand to touch the skin there. Moving your hand was not unlike moving lead, and your skin was tender to the prodding. What on earth had happened, you wondered, and you strained to remember. The figure in the alleyway comes to mind, but not much after. The room you were in was cozy and warmed by a crackling fire that cast dancing shadows across the walls. It was not a room of the working folk, but decorated modestly. A round red rug at the center, a wooden chair by the fire, and a carved desk to match. A little side table, the bed you lay on, and a small window was all the room possessed. On the side table was a silver tray projecting wonderful, mouth-watering scents. You shift onto your elbows, struggling to lift yourself. There's a whish of wind, and then a hand at your back. Be careful, you are still a bit weak. You inhale sharply and snapped your head to the new arrival. A man with red and white hair, perfectly split in the middle, appeared before you, as though he'd been yanked straight from the air. He was too well dressed to be anything other than an aristocrat. You want to flinch away from the stranger, but you were lethargic, and the more you moved, the more exhausted you seemed to be. The most you could manage was widening your eyes in surprise. "Who are you?" you croaked, throat dry. The man avoided your gaze, but continued to gently urge you into a sitting position. "Here, you must eat and drink all of this." He kept his face turned at such an angle that you could not see it. He did not allow you to, even as he set the tray on your lap. Upon the tray was a beautifully cooked steak with steamed broccoli and sweet potatoes, complemented by a wide glass of wine. Everything smelled divine, and was enough to stir your ravenous appetite. However, you didn't dare touch it. This treatment, the food, being waited on, the deluxe bed, all signs that he did not know that you were not one of them. I can't afford this, you tell the stranger with puzzlement. Please eat, he says, rushing over to the fire to tend to it. I'm not asking for you to pay. I'm sorry, but who are you? You ask with suspicion, because there was no real kindness amongst humanity. There was no free meal. That is not important, he replies monotonously, prodding at the fire. Well, considering you kidnapped me, I would say it is, you insist. The last thing I remember, exquisite glowing eyes, both magnificent and distressed, flashed in your head. I was being attacked, you realize slowly. You look to the stranger, his back still turned to you. Did you save me from the monster? The man stiffened, his wrist tightened on the fire iron subtly. You swallow as he rises from the ground. His dark silhouette looked menacing against the flickering flames. No, he said, turning to you and finally showing his face. I am the monster. He was arguably one of the most beautiful men you'd ever seen. An elegance and grace surrounded the very air around him, as though he stemmed from royalty. A burn mark marred the skin at his right eye, but it did nothing to obscure his natural allure. And his eyes, the blue and steel, were just as striking as when you'd first met them with your own. However, the charm of his appearance unleashed a terror within you. They confirmed just what he was, what beast lay under his act of cultured refinement. Why did you bring me here? You demand breathlessly. Is this a game? Did you bring me here to kill me in some sick and twisted way, vampire? You emphasize, because it was so obvious what he was. The vampire inhaled, unmoving, besides to set aside the poker. He was stoic, if not a little somber. I don't want to hurt you, he said with the same monotonous patience he'd had since he'd appeared. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was an accident. Please eat. You must regain your strength. Your eyes dropped to the delicious meal before you. A meal you knew you could not eat. Your heart thumped in a panic. What might have corrupted the ostentatious food? I'm not eating this, you say, moving the plate off your lap onto the bed. You had wanted to throw it, but you could not fling such good, expensive food so easily. I'm going home, you state more bravely than you felt. You log your legs off the bed, lethargy reintroducing itself to the conversation. When you finally manage to get your 2 feet on the ground and stand, they crumple underneath your weight. Your hands are almost too late to catch you before you hit the ground face first. The effort of simply getting off the bed left you huffing. Your head is swimming and you lay it back to try and steady the dizziness. The vampire hadn't moved to stop you from climbing off the bed. He just observed you quietly, though in the moments you sat on the ground trying to orientate yourself, he approached, cautiously. You press your back against the mattress, but he stays a safe distance away, or rather, what he would consider a reliable distance to prove himself safe and unimposing. He crouched down, speaking softly. His voice was smooth, like a secret stream hidden in the forest. I've given you no reason to trust me, so I understand why you refused food and aid, but you are weak from blood loss. Even if I was trying to hold you against your will, you would not be able to escape like this. But I am not trying to hold you hostage. I will personally take you home once you've recovered. I swear to you on my mother's grave. I just need you to eat. You stare into his eyes that are open and clear, imploring even if you looked hard enough. It was so easy to lose your train of thought while looking at sapphire and steel. You thought of how the precious gem and metal had looked like tears misting his vision as he attacked you. You didn't want to drink from me in that alley, did you? The vampire shook his head, his eyes breaking from your gaze to fall to the floor. I had tried to resist, but my hunger won in the end. For my weak will, I am deeply sorry. You bite your lip. He did sound contrite, but such creatures were masters of manipulation. Trusting one of them was an automatic no. However, he was right. You were weak, too weak to even stand for a full second. What chance would you have of leaving the vampire's den without his aid? Alright, I'll eat. Would you mind helping me back into the bed? I'm not quite sure I can rise on my own. He nodded. Of course. He moved briskly, carefully lifting you with a hand under your back and guiding you back under the covers. Then he places a tray of food back onto your lap. I've chosen food that will help replenish your blood. Thank you, sir. He makes a face, or really just a twitch of his nose. Don't call me that. My name is Todoroki Shoto. Thank you, Todoroki-san. You correct yourself. He bows his head and gives you space to eat. You cut into the steak and savor the juicy flavor as long as you could, picking the meal apart as slowly as you dared. It was the best meal you'd ever had, and you predict that you'll ever have. Thank you. This was delicious, you say, and Todoroki picks up the plate and graciously asks, like a true gentleman, "May I offer you dessert?" The plate he took disappeared, and another with the succulent chocolate cake appeared in his right hand. You swallow, eyeing the cake. Well, I wouldn't say no to that. You reason, in your head, that if he were to kill you after this, at least your last meal had been worth the trickery. You take a bite of it and moan at the richness. Did you make this? Oh, no, he admits. I am quite helpless in the kitchen. Hogagure made it. Hello, a bodiless voice piped up. You jump, searching the room for a person to belong to the voice. Your human eyes cannot see her. Unfortunately, she is a spirit, Todoroki explains. Oh, well, hello, Hogagure-san, you say hopefully towards her direction. Thank you, this was lovely. The next time she spoke, a perky voice sounded from right next to you. Oh, it was no problem. And please, no formalities. Call me Toro. Thank you, Toro, you say. We will leave you to rest, Todoroki said, as he takes the empty plate. Please, if you require anything, don't hesitate to call. You feel a bit nervous about willingly falling asleep under a vampire's roof. But considering how courteous said vampire had been, you consider that perhaps you were being a bit silly. In any case, he could have killed you at any given moment before you'd woken. You bow your head and attempt to make peace for the distrust you displayed so blatantly before. Thank you. I suppose the stories they tell about vampires are quite exaggerated, considering your hospitality. Todoroki paused as he reached the stairs in the corner of the room. No, I'm afraid those stories are quite true. When you wake to the morning songbirds and early sunlight, you sigh. That was the best sleep you'd ever had. You weren't sure what to attribute it to, the blissful bed or the filling meal. It could have been the bloodlust, but that was not something to be thankful for. You want to chide yourself for sleeping so soundly under a monster's roof. But with all the energy of a good night's rest, you could easily quiet the nagging voice. You rise, thankful that this time your 2 feet carried you. Still, you treaded carefully down the stairs, finding the modest lower half of the vampire's house. You find Todoroki sitting at a small round table in the kitchen, reading a book and completely smothered in sunlight. A myth then. Good to know. Good morning. Breakfast will be ready soon, Toru says, startling you. You'd nearly forgotten about her. But as the frying pan on the open fire moved, it was not hard to pinpoint where she was. Todoroki looks up from his book. Good morning. You smile politely, fully entering the room. Good morning. How did you sleep? He asks. Very well, thank you, you say, taking a seat at the table. That is good. Would you like to return to the village today, or would you like an extra day to recover? Today, I think, you answer immediately. You think of returning, wondering if anyone had truly missed you. Perhaps the innkeeper would be inconvenienced by your disappearance. You almost grimace with the thought of his anger. Very well. As soon as you are ready, I will accompany you to the village. You look around the room, noticing how plain everything was. At the very least, the bedroom had had some decor. But here, there was nothing to set this place apart from middle class. Well, except the huge pile of gold sitting in the living room, taking up more than a quarter of the space. You blink at the shimmering gold, even rub at your eyes to ensure it was not a figment of your imagination. You stare at it so long, your eyes begin to hurt from the brightness. Guess it's true. All vampires are wealthy, you say mostly to yourself. Not all, Todoroki says, glancing at the gold. Some prefer to live like nomads, and couldn't be damned with something as trivial as money. Then he looked at you and asked, Would you like some? So nonchalantly, as though he was offering a cup of tea. You splutter, What? A slight wrinkle appeared at Todoroki's brow. You looked as though you wanted some. Sorry, did I offend you? No, Todoroki-san, you say, trying to steady yourself from the shock. You didn't offend me. It's just that people do not just readily give away gold like that. Well, I am not people, he states. I am a vampire. Yes, you say at the obvious statement. Then ask, because the curiosity was digging at your insides. How is it that you came to be with this much gold? Do vampires work? There are vampires who work. A few I know personally maintain permanent residence within towns, though it is not common. This money came from my father. A small portion I stole when I escaped. I just thought it would make my journey easier. A small portion. You eye the mountainous pile of gold. A small portion of the gold in front of you would set you for life. Food's ready, Toru announces, and places 2 plates on the table for you and Todoroki. The breakfast was simple, bacon, eggs, and toast. Thank you, Toru, Todoroki says, and you repeat it distantly, your eyes fixated on the sparkling gold, calling out to the poor in you. Just a little of what the vampire had an abundance of would change your life. You'd never have to work again, never had to deal with those rude and perverted patrons that found their way to the inn. You can even move, start a life in a bigger city. You stared at the pile of gold that held so much of promise, if only you chose to reach out and take it. But you couldn't. Money given without being earned was never truly your money. You turn back to the meal before you, contemplating your next decision thoroughly. What if I helped you? Todoroki paused in a bite he was about to take. Pardon? If I helped you with something, then you could give me the gold. you explain, biting your lip. Todoroki continued to eat, his tone dismissive, as he said, "Really, it's all right. You can just take as much as you want. Money is not as important to me as it is to humans." "Yes, I have noticed that, Todoroki-san. It is just that I wouldn't feel comfortable taking that from you without giving something in return. But that gold, even a little of it, would greatly benefit me. And if you are offering, I would rather not leave without it." Todoroki inhaled subtly, as though his next words would be difficult to say. "You gave your blood." "Yes, well, I also got 5-star in treatment for that. You glance over to the gold again. "Well, it's just that I noticed you lack control over your thirst for blood, and that displeases you. If I could help with that, you could give me the gold as a fair exchange for a service to you." Todoroki turned somewhat cold. "That is not a service you should offer so casually, human. Would it not be better if I helped you?" "You persist. Then you wouldn't have to torture yourself. You wouldn't have to lose control and hurt innocents. Isn't that what you want?" Todoroki stared at you unflinchingly. "Are you not afraid of me?" You became very aware of his fangs in that moment, as though he purposely opened his mouth a little wider for you to see. "Well, a little," you answer honestly. "But I think I'm going to try to help you." Your resolve was sealed. Todoroki leaned back against the chair, observing you stoically, and you could sense the critical gaze under the emotionless mask. "If you are up to the task, then I suppose I could use the assistance," he said finally. "I do not like being a slave to my bloodlust when the urge to feed becomes too great. I will let you help me, on the condition that should I ever tell you at any given moment that it is not safe to be in my presence, no matter the state I may be in, you are to leave immediately. Is that understood?" You agreed easily. There was no universe where you would want to be anywhere near a ravenous vampire. "I understand." Todoroki inclined his head. "Then, human, we have an agreement."